Okay. So our topic for today, it's all about the domain and range of a function. But before moving forward to finding the domain and range of the function, I would like to share with you the real numbers. What is a real numbers? So when we talk about real numbers, it is divided into two. Meron tayong tinatawag na rational numbers and irrational numbers. I hope may background na tayo dito, no? Pero just to have a deeper understanding of the real numbers, dalawa yung types of real numbers. Meron tayong tinatawag na rational numbers and irrational numbers. So what is the difference between rational numbers and irrational numbers? Now, when we talk about rational numbers, it is a combination of the integers, the whole numbers, natural numbers. It has a decimal point, na repetitive decimal, and it has a fraction. Now, anong pinagkaiba niya kay irrational? Si irrational, meron din namang decimal point. The difference between rational numbers and irrational numbers is that pagdating sa rational numbers, mapapansin natin ang kanyang decimal point is with repetition. 9.45, 45, parang repeating decimal siya. Pagdating naman sa irrational numbers, hindi siya repeating decimal. Continuous decimal point lang siya, walang katapusan. So that's one, limbawa, 1.24348.7, ... infinite. And we have also square root of 2 as a irrational numbers, square root of 10 as an irrational numbers, square root of 3 is an irrational number, and a pi is irrational numbers. Now, bakit si pi ay example of irrational numbers? Kung marirecall natin, pi is being introduced to us with the value of 3.14. Okay? Pero, the value of pi is not just 3.14. Kung bakit siya naging irrational, it's because when we talk about pi, kumbaga we can spend the rest of our lives just telling all the numbers in pi. Ibig sabihin, wala siyang katapusan. Pagdating naman natin kay rational numbers, kanyang decimal point ay repetitive decimal with repetition, kumbaga ay may fix. So 9.45, 45, 45. 3/4. Kung kukunin natin ang decimal into a decimal ng 3/4, that's, I guess, 0.75, 0.75. Kumbaga may specific lang siya. Kumbaga meron siyang katapusan. And of course, under rational numbers, it is divided into integers, whole numbers, and natural numbers. When we talk about integers, ito yung mga numbers na positive and the negative numbers, and the zero. Now we have the whole numbers. Anong pinagkaiba ni integers kay whole numbers? When we talk about whole numbers, it includes zero and all the positive numbers. When we talk about natural numbers naman, it's all about the positive numbers. So that's all about real numbers. So moving forward, I would just like to review lang on the domain and range of the function. It was mentioned that the domain is the set of all the coordinates of the ordered pairs or the x values, while the range naman, okay, so all the y values is the range and x is the domain. Given from this example, in finding the domain and range of the function, we have the coordinates 0, 3, -1 and 4, -2 and 5, -3 and 6. So for us to find the domain, that's all the x values. Ano yung mga value ng x? Ayan, kunin natin ang value ng x. So that's 0, -1, -2, and -3. For the range naman, it's the y values. So we have the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6. So what I'm trying to say is that when we talk about domain, it's all about the x values. And when we talk about range, it's all about the y values. Okay? Let's have an example on that. Sige nga, you try to find the domain and range of the function below. So you can type your answers on the chat box, no? You just identify lang if it's the domain or the range. And gagamit tayo ng ng colon. I mean, Kuwait ba? Yun, parang ganun. So we identify the domain and range of this function. So identify natin ang domain and i-identify din natin ang range. You can type your answers on the chat box. Oops. Nawala siya. Wait lang. Ito ba yun? Oh, ito nga. Yan. Sige. Yan. We can type your answers on the chat box. Yes, Marie, you're raising your hand.
Ma'am, sasagot po.
Sure, sure.
Ma'am, yung domain or yung x values is negative 1, 0, 2, 3, and 4. While yung range po ay 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9.
Okay. Thank you. So that's the value of our domain and the range. The domain talks about the x values and the range talks about the y values. Ayan. So andyan yung mga sagot ng ating classmates, no? So that's the difference between the domain and the range. Ayan. So the domain is the x values and the range is the y values. Okay. Okay. So the domain of a function is the set of values that we are allowed to plug into our function. The set is the x values in the function such as f of x. Ayan. So pag sinabing f of x, parang ano lang din siya. F of x is just equal to y. Kumbaga y is, minsan sinusulat siya as f of x. It can be interchanged. Kumbaga pwede nating isulat ang f of x instead of y, o di kaya naman y instead of the f of x. So it was mentioned and defined that when we talk about the domain of the function, it's the set of the values that we are allowed. Okay? Ibig sabihin lang niya, ano-ano yung mga set of values na allowed to plug into our function. This set is the x values in a function such as f of x. Paano ba natin malalaman na it's allowed? Okay? Malalaman natin if a certain value is allowed to plug into our function kapag yung result natin is not an imaginary numbers or hindi siya magiging undefined. Now, let's define the range first before we have an example on that. So pag sinabi naman natin the range of the function, it's the set of values that the function assume. This set is the values that the function shoots out after we plug an x value. They are the y values. Okay, so kung titingnan natin ang illustration, ang input natin is the x. Yung input natin is the x, nilalagay natin siya sa function. Tapos ang magiging output natin is the f of x or the y. Dapat itong output natin, itong f of x natin, yung final answer natin would be real numbers. Yan, pinakita ko na kanina what are the real numbers. Dapat real numbers siya, not an imaginary numbers, and hindi rin siya undefined. Yan. Let's have an example on that. Mapapansin nyo, kanina ko pa nababanggit yung term na undefined and term na imaginary. Ano ba ang imaginary and ano ang undefined? Okay. Pag sinabi nating undefined, ang isang number, and bakit nga ba nagiging undefined ang isang number? Now, kapag ang isang fraction, ang denominator niya ay 0, that's undefined. Ayan. Let's say 2 over 0. Okay? 2 over 0 is undefined. Meaning, dapat ang ating denominator would not be equal to 0. Okay? Kapag nag-equal to 0 ang ating denominator, the result of the function, yung magiging output natin is undefined. So, ang pinaka-aim lang natin, dapat hindi maging 0 ang denominator natin. Once it becomes 0, then that's undefined. Now, how about the term imaginary? Okay, just to add, magkaiba ang 2 over 0 kay 0 over 2. 2 over 0 That's undefined. 0 over 2 equal to 0. Yan. Equal to 0. If you are going to check that on the calculator, pag 2 divided by 0, ang magiging result ay error o di kaya naman, it's undefined. Now, let's talk about the imaginary numbers. Imaginary. Ano ba imaginary? Ibig sabihin ba? Hindi natin nakikita. Imaginary. So when we talk about imaginary numbers, ganito siya. The square root of a negative number. Getting the square root of a negative number, ang magiging sagot niyan ay imaginary. I repeat, getting the square root of a negative number, ang magiging result niyan ay imaginary. Now, bakit ang square root ng 16? Kung kukunin natin ang square root ng 16, ang magiging result natin, this is a plus or minus 4. Bakit plus or minus 4? It's because positive 4 times a positive 4, the answer is 16. Negative 4 multiplied to a negative 4, ang sagot ay positive, ang sagot is positive 16. Ayan, that's why the square root of 16 is a plus or minus 4. Yung negative 16 naman, okay, negative 16, kung kukunin natin ang square root niyan, we will write it this way. Ganito siya. May letter I. Ibig sabihin, that's imaginary. I'll repeat, getting the square root of a negative number, the result is an imaginary number. So ang aim natin in finding the domain and range, ang pinaka-purpose lang natin, dapat yung final answer natin is not undefined and not an imaginary number. I'll repeat, dapat hindi siya undefined at hindi rin siya imaginary number. Dapat we must be able to understand pala the real numbers. Once maintindihan natin ang real numbers and the different types of the real numbers, mas madadigest natin bakit that's the answer. Ayan, so to move forward, the first topic natin in finding the domain of the range of the function is getting the domain and range of the function ng isang linear function. Magsimula tayo kay linear functions. Okay. What do we mean by a linear functions? The first one, format of y is equal to k. Kapag ang isang linear function is in the format of y is equal to k, automatically ang ating domain, ayan, ang ating domain would be, ito yung magiging domain natin, x, such that x is an element of the real numbers. Ibig sabihin, kapag it's in the format of y is equal to k, ang domain natin or yung possible values of x ay all the real numbers. Ibig sabihin nun, kapag ang i-plug in natin all the real numbers, automatically, syempre, ang magiging result natin, all the real numbers. How about the range? In getting the range naman, that would be y, such that y is equal to letter k. Ayan. Again, if it's in the format of y is equal to k, ang domain natin ay all the real numbers. Okay? Sinusulat natin yun as x, such that x is an element of R, meaning all the real numbers, yung na-mention kanina. And for finding the range naman, y, such that y is equal to k. So bakit siya naging ganon? Let's have an example. Let's say y is equal to, yan, y is equal to 8. Same siya doon sa first formula natin. So sabi sa ating formula, if it's in the format of y is equal to k, automatically ang domain natin ay all the real numbers. So syempre, ang magiging sagot natin, all the real numbers. So the domain ay x, such that x is the set of all the real numbers. Ayan. And how about the range? Sabi sa formula natin, y is equal to k. So therefore, ang ating magiging range, that is y, such that y is equal to 8. Okay? Y is equal to 8. Bakit yung range natin y is equal to 8? Kasi, given na siya, y is equal to 8. Meaning, the value of y is just equal to 8. Hindi na siya mababago. Hindi mo na yan mababago. Y is just equal to 8. So, therefore, ang ating range ay just equal to, the range is y such that y is equal to 8. Sige nga, let's have an example on this one. Let's say y is equal to 5. Ayan. Based from our formula, kapag it's in the format of y is equal to k, ano ang magiging domain natin? So therefore, ang ating domain ay, based from the formula, no, gagawin nating guide yung ating formula. If it's a linear function, automatically, ang ating domain ay all the real numbers. Okay, all the real numbers. How about the range? What would be our range? So ang range natin, y, such that y is equal to 5. Y is equal to 5. Ayan. So that would be the range of our linear functions. The second one na linear function, ito yung in the form of y is equal to mx plus b. Ayan, mx plus b. And yung letter m natin, letter m should not be equal to 0. Okay? Kapag ang letter m natin equal to 0, then ang i-apply natin na formula is this one. Okay? Kasi mag-i-equal to 0 yan. Magiging y is equal to b lang. So, the m should not be equal to 0. So, kapag it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, ang ating magiging domain automatically, that's the domain of that would be domain I x such that x is the set of all the real numbers. Ayan. Again, if it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, and m should not be equal to 0, therefore, the domain is the set of all the real numbers. How about the range? So, ang magiging range din natin, kapag it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, ang ating range din ay y, such that y is the set of all the real numbers. So, we have y is equal to the 3x plus 7. Now, y is equal to 3x plus 7. Sabi natin, for us to find the domain, ito yung input natin. Ito yung input, no? Input. At ito yung magiging output natin. Yung result niya is magiging output. Now, ano yung input natin? Ang input natin is, ano ba yung mga possible value na x? What are the possible value ni x na yung output natin is a real numbers? Okay? Anong ilalagay natin sa x? Anong isusubstitute natin doon sa value ng x para yung final answer din natin is a real numbers? Obviously, dapat real numbers din ang i-input natin. Kung real numbers ang input natin, automatically, ang output natin is a real numbers also. I repeat, kapag nag-input tayo ng real numbers sa x, sa y is equal to 3x plus 7, then kapag sinolve natin yan, by the process of substitution, ang magiging output natin ay a real numbers din. Let's have an example, no? Let's say we have the x is equal to, ang naisip natin na real numbers ay 2. Kung iso-substitute natin yan, that's y is equal to 3 times 2 plus 7. So y is equal to 6 plus 7, y is equal to 13. And 13 is a real numbers. Pwede rin tayo mag-try ng ibang number, a real number. I-try natin i-plug in kung ang result ba niya is a real number. Again, in the form of y is equal to mx plus b, kapag nag-plug in ka, ang input mo is a real numbers, automatically, ang output mo din is a real numbers. Kumbaga, ang ibig ko lang sabihin, kung tayo ay nagtanim ng mangga, syempre, yung puno na yon mamumunga din ng mangga. Okay? Hindi yun namumunga ng banana. It's, kapag nagtanim tayo ng mangga, mangga din ang ini-expect natin. Okay? Kumbaga, kahit hindi pa siya namumunga, yung puno ng mangga, expected na mangga ang kanyang magiging fruit kapag siya ay namunga. Same with this one, no? Y is equal to 3x plus 7. Kapag nag-plug in tayo ng real number dito sa ating y is equal to mx plus b na form, ang kanyang magiging output din is a real numbers. So ayun lang yung purpose natin. So ibig sabihin, ang magiging domain natin, or should I say, ang magiging input natin ay real numbers. Magiging input natin ay real numbers. So that's the reason why our domain ay the set of real numbers. Yan. Erase ko lang to ha. I'll just erase lang this one. Oops. I'll just erase lang. Yeah. So that is why, rewrite ko lang, y is equal to 3x plus 7. Therefore, ang ating domain, dahil in the format siya ng y is equal to mx plus b, ang ating domain ay domain x such that x is the set of all the real numbers. Let's now move on to range. Okay. Sabi sa range, kapag it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, ang kanyang range din daw ay the set of all the real numbers. Dahil ang y is equal to 3x plus 7 is in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, automatically ang ating range ay y, such that y is the set of all the real numbers. Okay? Paano nangyari yon? Okay. Ganito lang gagawin natin. For us to find the range, may range na tayo, no? Let's say hindi natin alam ang formula. Hindi natin alam na kapag, erase ko lang muna ha, let's say hindi natin alam na kapag it's in the format pala of y is equal to mx plus b, ang sagot pala ay all real numbers na agad. Let's try to solve muna. Let's say, isosolve muna natin yung function natin and then we identify kung ano yung magiging range natin. How do we solve the y is equal to 3x plus 7? So, that's just solving for solving for range. Sulat ko lang dito. Solving for the range. Okay. Ang ating function is 3x plus 7. How to find the range? So, ang gagawin natin, we need to solve for x in terms of y. Let's say hindi natin alam ha na kapag y is equal to mx plus b pala, all the real numbers na yung sagot niya. So, ang gagawin natin, we try to solve. We solve for x in terms of y. We need to subtract 7 to both sides of the equation. We subtract 7 to both sides of the equation. It becomes y minus 7 is equal to 3x. And we solve for x. Cancel na natin to. So x is equal to y minus 7 over 3. Now, ang gagawin natin, ito yung magiging input natin, ito yung magiging output. Ano yung mga value ni y? Ano yung pwedeng ilagay kay y para ang sagot natin is not an undefined or not a imaginary numbers. Pwede natin ilagay kay y is lahat ng real numbers. Okay? Pwede lahat ng real numbers kasi kapag isolve natin, whatever the real numbers na ilagay mo kay y, ang output pa din niya is a real number. Sabi ko nga kanina, kapag tayo ay nagtanim ng mangga, automatically ang output natin ay mangga din. So that's how ganun ang nangyayari in solving for the range. So bakit ang ating range ay the set of real numbers. So therefore, ang magiging value ng range natin ay y, such that y is the set of all the real numbers. Pero having this formula, na kapag it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, without solving, kapag it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, automatically, alam na natin ang sagot. The domain is all the real numbers, And the range is also all the real numbers. Sige nga, let's try. Let's say y is equal to 5 plus 2x. What do you think is the domain? So therefore, ang ating domain, kasi it's in the format of y is equal to mx plus b, x, such that x is an element of the real numbers. And same with the range, y, such that y is the set of all the real numbers. Mapapansin nyo, it's y is equal to 5 plus 2x. Bakit po, same lang ba siya sa mx plus b in that format? Ayan, yes po. Ito ay same lang sila. Okay? Same lang to. In the format pa din siya ng y is equal to mx plus b. Kasi, mx plus b ay just equal to b plus mx. So that's the commutative property of addition. Ibig sabihin, changing the order of the addends does not affect the sum. Kahit pagpalitin natin, hindi magbabago ang kanilang sum. Halimbawa, 5 plus 2 is just equal to 2 plus 5. Kaya, yung y is equal to 5 plus 2x, in the format pa din yan ng y is equal to mx plus b. Okay, moving forward, no, let's move forward to letter B. Ang ating letter B is the quadratic functions. How do we find naman the domain and range of a quadratic functions? Y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay. Ayan. Quadratic functions. Getting the domain and range of a quadratic function. If it's in the format of y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, ang domain daw natin, ang ating domain, ay x such that x is the set of all the real numbers. Okay? So yun yung domain natin kapag it's a quadratic function. How about the range? Ayan, medyo tricky lang sa range, no, in getting the range of a quadratic function. So in getting the range of that, meron tayong sinusundan na formula. Range. Okay, getting the range of that. So y is greater than or equal to 4ac minus b squared over 4a if a is positive. A is positive. And then y is less than or equal to 4ac minus b squared over 4a if a is negative. Okay. So kapag meron daw tayong quadratic function, for us to find the domain of that, the answer would be the set of all the real numbers. How about the range? Sabi, if a is positive, then we use the formula of y is greater than 4ac minus b squared over 4a. If a is negative, then we use y is less than 4ac minus b squared over 4a. Okay, so let's have an example on that, no? Let's say ang example natin ay, let's say we need to find the domain and range of y is equal to the 3x squared plus 4x plus 5. So y is equal to 3x squared plus 4x plus 5. Unang tingin pa lang natin, that's a quadratic function. I'll repeat, that's a quadratic function. Now, it was mentioned na kapag it's a quadratic function, automatically our domain is the set of all the real numbers, x, such that is an element of the real numbers. Now, how to find for the range? How to find for the range? Ito yung unang step, Ito yung unang step in finding for the domain. Ang una pong step is we need to find A, B, and C. So we look for A, B, and C. Okay. Sa letter A, ito yung constant. Ito yung coefficient. Ano yung coefficient na mayroong x squared? Okay. Hanapin natin yung variables na mayroong x squared. Ito yon. Ano yung coefficient niya? That's equal to 3. Yan. Next. Ano man yung letter B? Yung letter B, ito yung coefficient ng variable x. Yung yung walang square, yung variable x lang. Ito yung letter B. So this is equal to 4. Now, yung letter C naman, ito yung constant, which is 5. The constant. So A is equal to 3. A yung merong square. Letter B is equal to 4, with yung katabi ng variable x. And letter C is equal to 5. Ayan, we have the value na of A, B, and C. I'll repeat, unang step, we look for A, B, and C. Yung pangalawang step, step number 2, tingnan natin yung value ni A. Is it positive or negative? Positive. Sabi dito, kapag letter A is positive, we use this formula. Ito yung formula na gagamitin natin if A is positive. Ika-copy ko lang ha, I'll just copy it. So Y is greater than or equal to 4AC minus the B squared over 4A. Again, I'll just copy yung formula na kapag ang A daw is positive. After that, iso-substitute natin, no? We need to substitute. Oops. Happen. Ayan. We need to substitute. Iso-substitute lang natin yung value ni A, B, and the C. So 4. The value of A is equal to 3. Ayan. The value of B is equal, the value of C is equal to 5. 5. Minus the value of letter B.
4.
4 square daw over 4 times the value of A, which is 3. Yan na, nag-substitute lang tayo. And then, simplify lang natin. 4 times 3, i-multiply lang natin tong tatlong to. We just multiply lang them together. 4 times 3 times 5. Okay, so that's 60 minus 4 square. 16. Mapapansin nyo, bakit minus pa din? Negative times negative, positive. Kasi ang in-square natin yung 4. Yung 4 lang ang in-square natin, hindi kasama yung sign sa labas. Over 4 times 3.
12.
So Y is greater than or equal to 60 minus 16.
44 po.
44. 44, tama. 44 over 12. And we reduce this one to lowest term. Okay? Pag na-reduce natin sa lowest term, the value of Y is greater than or equal to 11 over 3. Ayan. Kapag na-reduce natin sa lowest term, ang 44 over 12, that becomes 11 over 3. Okay, bakit siya naging 11 over 3? Ganito siya. So we have itong 44 over 12. Itong 44 over 12, i-reduce natin sa lowest term. Now, paano ba tayo mag-reduce sa lowest term? Kapag nagre-reduce tayo ng lowest term, gumagamit tayo ng factor 3. Gumagamit tayo ng factor 3 o di kaya naman ng ladder method to find the GCF or the common factor. Usually, the very common is the factor 3. We have the 44 and 12. Ayan. So 44, what are the two numbers? Now, when we multiply them together, the result is 44. That's 11 times 4. We have 2 times 2. Ayan, mag-stop na tayo dito. Bakit ako nag-stop na dito? It's because, ano na siya, prime numbers. Sa factor 3, mag-stop na tayo maghanap ng factors kapag it's a prime numbers. Ano naman ang prime numbers? Ang ibig sabihin ng prime numbers, ito yung mga numbers na walang ibang pwedeng i-divide sa kanila except 1 and itself. Parang 11. No numbers can be divided to 11 except 1 at yung sarili niya, which is 11. Same with 2. Walang ibang number na pwede nating i-divide kay 2 except 1 and itself. Parang 5. Wala na ibang pwedeng i-divide except 1 and itself. Magkaiba ang prime numbers sa odd numbers ha. Ang halimbawa ng prime numbers, 11. Yan. Ang 9, it's not a prime numbers. Bakit? Si 11, just 1 and itself. Si 9, may 1, may 9, at pwede rin siyang i-divide kay 3. Yan. More than 2 na yon. So, 9 is not a prime number. Ayan. So, moving forward, how about 12? What are the two numbers being multiplied together? Okay, 4 times 3. And for 4, we have, so for 44, 11 times 2 times 2. Pwede rin natin i-check. 11 times 2, that's 22. Times 2, that's 44. For 12 naman, we have 2 times 2 times 3. Now, how to find the GCF? We look for the common. Ano yung common between 44 and 12? Ang common sa kanila is this one and this one. So, yung isang common, ito po, ito I count as 1. Ito din I count as 1. So, we have 2 times 2, it becomes 4. Kaya, 44 divided by 4 and 12 divided by 4, kaya we come up with 11 over 3. Our range would be y such that y is a set of real numbers, pero si y greater than or equal to 11 over 3. So what if it's a negative naman, no? Para makita lang natin, how do we solve naman if the quadratic function is a negative? Let's say let's have another example. Let's say y is equal to negative 2x squared plus 1. Y is equal to negative 2x squared plus 1. So this is a quadratic function. Sabi sa ating formula, kapag it's a quadratic function, automatically, the domain is the set of all the real numbers. X, such that X is the element of R. Now, second step, we find for the A, B, and the C. So letter A, letter B, and letter C. Sabi natin, letter A, ito yung coefficient ng mayroong x square. So the coefficient of x square ay negative 2. And letter B, sabi natin, letter B, ito yung katabi ng variable x. So mapapansin natin, there's no variable x dito, except for the x square. So ibig sabihin, the letter B ay 0. And letter C, it was mentioned din kanina na it's the constant. So that's equal to 1. Second, for us to find the range, tingnan natin, is A positive or negative? Negative. Kapag negative, we use this formula. And the y less than. Kapag A is negative, we use the formula, itong formula. Ito. This one. Yan ang gagamitin nating formula. So it becomes y less than or equal to 4ac minus the b squared over 4a. Yan. And then substitute lang natin. So copy lang, y less than 4, the value of a ay negative 2, the value of c ay 1, the value of letter P ay 0. 0 square over 4 times the value of A, which is negative 2. So Y less than or equal to 4 times a negative 2. Ang magiging sagot ay negative 8 minus 0 over negative 8. So this becomes Y less than or equal to negative 8 over a negative 8. Y is less than or equal to negative 8 over a negative 8. That would be equal to 1. So ang ating magiging range would be Y such that Y is the set of all the real numbers wherein Y is less than or equal to 1. We move forward na sa rational functions. For our letter C, that's the rational functions. Rational functions. So how do we find the domain and range of the rational functions? Okay. So in getting the domain and range of the rational functions, ang gagawin lang natin is we look for its restriction. Ano yung mga restriction niya? So ibig sabihin ng restriction, dapat ang kanyang denominator would not equal to 0 para hindi siya maging undefined. So let's say we have our first example. Meron tayong Y is equal to 3x plus 5 over the x minus 2. So y is equal to 3x plus 5 and then x minus 2. How do we find for the domain? Paano natin nahanapin ang domain na to? How do we find for the domain? Okay. For us to find the domain, we have to find restriction. Okay. We need to find restriction. So sulat ko lang. We have to find restriction. Okay, so for us to get the domain of y is equal to 3x plus 5 over x minus 2, we have to find restrictions since division by 0 is not defined. So ang ibig ko lang sabihin, focus tayo doon sa denominator. Ang ating denominator ay x minus 2. And x minus 2 should not be equal to 0. Okay, hindi siya pwede maging 0. Therefore, ang magiging final answer natin would be, again, we find for the restriction. Ano yung value ni x na mag-i-equal to 0 yan? What would be the value of x? Para maging equal to 0 ang ating denominator. 2. Ibig sabihin, ang ating domain would be x such that x is the set of all the real numbers and x should not be equal to 2. Bakit? Kasi pag nag-equal to 2 yan, magiging 0 na ang ating denominator. Pag naging 0, it's undefined. So, ibig sabihin, ang ating domain ay all the real numbers except 2. Except 2 except 2. Kasi kapag sinubstitute natin ang 2, that would be 2 minus 2 equal to 0 yon. So again, ang unang gagawin lang natin is we look for restriction. How about the range? Siyempre, ganun din sa range natin. We need to find restriction. So for us to find the value of range, we need to solve for x. Solve for x in terms of y. In terms of y. And find restriction. And we need to find restrictions. Yeah, we need to find the restrictions. So, di ba we have y is equal to 3x plus 5 over x minus 2. So, for us to find the range of that, isosolve muna natin siya in terms of y. We solve for x in terms of y. we need to multiply both sides by x minus 2 para ma-cancel natin yung x minus 2 sa bottom. Or, pwede rin naman natin mag-cross multiply tayo. Cross multiplication is becomes y times x minus 2 is equal to 3x plus 5. Distribute natin si y, it becomes xy minus 2y is equal to 3x plus 5. Combine natin si x, combine together, so this becomes negative 2y minus 5 is equal to 3x minus xy. So, negative 2y minus 5, factor out x, 3 minus y, 3 minus y, and then divide both sides by 3 minus y, and then 3 minus y. So this become x is equal to negative 2y minus 5 over 3 minus y. So ito na yung x natin at dito tayo magtitingin ng ating range. Okay. So for the range, dapat ang denominator natin would not be equal to 0. Ang denominator natin ay 3 minus y and it should not be equal to 0. So therefore, ano magiging value ni range? Ano yung magiging value ni y para maging 0 yan? 3. So ibig sabihin y such that y is an element of R and the value of y should not be equal to 3. Okay? Kasi pag nag-equal to 3 yan, magiging undefined ang ating functions. Ang rational functions natin magiging undefined. So I'll just repeat lang before we end this one. Pag sinabi nating domain and range of a rational function, ang una nating titingnan is we look for the denominator. We look for the restriction. Ano yung restriction niya? So for x minus 2, ang restriction niya is x should not be equal to 2. Sa next one naman, ang restriction niya, y should not be equal to 3. Bakit? Kasi pag nag-equal to 2, ang domain, magiging 0. Pag nag-equal to 3 naman, magiging 0 at hindi siya pwedeng maging 0. So therefore, ang magiging sagot lang natin is domain, all the real numbers pa din, and then we emphasize the restriction. Sa range naman, all the real numbers pa din, but we emphasize on the restriction.